Evening all, or should I say Happy New Year to everybody who is knocking about. If you are a sad, pathetic loser, join us because you'll be in good company. Danny and I are more or less staying in this evening just to spend it with you. So you don't need to be, don't need to be lonely at all. How are you this evening, Danny?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, and Happy New Year. Yeah, I'm fully staying in, by the way. I will join you on a beer shortly. I've not got a beer open right now because I'll need the toilet in like half an hour if I do that. So, but yeah, I'm pretty good. Pretty good. It's heads a bit all over the place FPL wise, and we're obviously halfway through a game week, but we didn't pod last week, did we? So we've sort of got a bit of catching up to do in terms of where we're at and.
Yeah. I mean, this is the only way of us fitting it in, really, wasn't it? So it is, as you say, what is it? Are there 4 games left this game week, aren't there? So we've done 6. I'm sure we've done 6 of 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just about to look, so I was thinking, what have we got? Yeah, four games tomorrow. Oh, 5:30 and then 8 o'clock. That's good. So we can actually watch all the games.
Yeah. So, as you say, City, Liverpool, all that kind of stuff to come. There's been quite a lot of change actually since in our team since we last talked. So I'd be quite interested because I know that you've. I was about to attempt a Geordie accent there. I was like, no, don't do that. Do not do that. We won't do that. But if you can imagine how I would do it, that's how I would do it. But yeah, so that'd be good. And my team's in a bit of a mess this week, so I'll be glad to see if you can have your eyes on it because it's a bit of a raggedy position since Senor Minteh and the legendary Big Dong Michael Keane have caused me some bother. So we'll come to them a little bit later on. Good, cool. What I'll do, I'll skip straight into, because I know we're going to try and be quite short this, because we know that people were going out or enjoying things or whatever it is, and they don't want to be sticking around with us all evening, I'm sure, because that would really be very upsetting to everyone, I'm sure. But we'll get straight into things fairly quickly, I think. If I can try and load it up. There we go. So midnight move. So this is about as party as we get here. Danny's done his best to make it look like we go on to, I was going to say discos. No, I'm not that old. Clubs, yes. Do you know what? I was speaking to our good friend Spence earlier, FPL Beery, who occasionally joins us here and talks to us about Sunderland and that sort of thing. Now, he drops me the odd kind of voice note, that kind of thing, because it's quite fun. And he sounded in a really ropey condition this morning, like really kind of ill and probably hungover and all that kind of stuff. And then later on, he was like, "Oh yeah, but no, I'm still going out tonight and going drinking." I was like, he sounded rotten this morning. So if you are listening or preparing for a night out, this is what happened. I think he's Spencer. He's probably about 24, isn't it? You can do that.
Yeah,
I can't do that anymore.
I mean, I don't quite go out like that, obviously, anymore at all. But well, sometimes. But I can still relate to that. I mean, I pretty much did that on Boxing Day. So, and this happens every year. I realise the same pattern happens every year. But drank far too much on Christmas Day. I didn't actually get home till like 3 a.m. Stayed at my dad's because it's nearby, so I could just walk there. And I was shocking the next day. I would have definitely sounded like Spencer. And the only solution to feeling so shocking on Boxing Day was to go to the pub, obviously, because only real ale can fix it, really. You know, you realise that as well. Like proper hair of the dog, can't even do lagers anymore, or cocktails or anything like that. If I'm really hungover now, I need a proper pint of real ale, and I need 3 before we can even start, having normal conversation. So
I know what you mean, because there's something about. I mean, our good friend David actually will at some point will drop in and hear me say this, and he'll be very pleased. But he's a cask ale kind of guy, and I know what you mean, real ale, cask ale, whatever you want to call it. That sort of settles you a bit more than other things. There's something about like lager and unpleasant kind of
something about it. It's the organic nature of it. It's not got anything added to it. It's not got carbon dioxide thrown in. It's not got some horrible mixer or some cheapy. It's just proper. There's something about proper beer, yeah, and it's not too fizzy. God, I'm licking my lips now. I'm looking forward to beer now.
Before I say hello to the chat, I'm just going to ask you, how many drinks do you think I've had over the Christmas period?
Well, probably fewer than most. I don't know. Like now that you've asked me that, I mean, you do all the cooking, you do all the prep and all the work and all the hard stuff. So I'd imagine not as many as you should have had. So
0.
what?
Yeah, I know. John, it's not planned at all. It's just happened like that. It's I will explain off stream why it's gone that direction. It is quite outrageous. But tonight we'll have a few and be a bit more.
Good, yeah.
Jolly, admittedly, it will just be me, but yeah. Well, I can join with you in a minute. Yeah, exactly. We should say a quick hello to the chat because it is an unusual evening for us to pod. We are hopefully conscious that there'll be no competition because no one else could possibly be sad enough to do this at this time. But a few people have joined us. It's good to see Heather. She's found some space in her busy social calendar to join us. Happy New Year from her. Alex in New Zealand, of course, he's already had New Year. So the new year is already broken here in New Zealand. The wife and I are off to walk the dog on a beautiful sunny morning by the beach. Do you know what? I can get on board with that kind of a new year. So that sounds very good. Pieter, apologies if I've butchered that. And many others besides. I wonder whether this is Donny, actually. No, maybe not. The Goon Start Evening all and Happy New Year in advance. I wasn't sure. And Gareth there as well. But lots of other people beside, but Happy New Year if you are just joining. Even Jossie's found his way in. He's actually got a question on the pod tonight. So Jossie, there we go. He to be honest with you, Jossie, I can send you the link and you can join us for a drink if you're not too busy. By all means do. But that would be a bit off the cuff, wouldn't it? A bit exciting for us. You know.
Yeah.
And Heather just confirms 10:30 p.m. is a late bedtime for me these days. Yep, I'm with you. Yep, I get it. So on to the good stuff. Quick reference to the mini league. I haven't really kind of added it up very closely because, of course, we're midweek. But Matthew Nuttall, big Matthew Nuttall, he is storming it. He's at the top with Defcon Dynamos, followed by Nick S. Sarah Almanius is back in at number 3. And what have we got there? And Zach Farnell, there we are. He's still in the top 6. I always got to give a mention to him because of he's obviously paid me to say that kind of stuff. There we are. Very good. League is now closed, unfortunately. What is quite exciting, if you do want to scroll down, it might not be the case anymore, but Danny and I were on equal points, I've been told, at the beginning of this game week. So that's quite exciting. So big evil Danny and the people's favourite in a straight off head-to-head. Oh, just before we go on, by the way, Pep in the chat. He can't stay because he's off out like a real man. Like a real man with friends.
What is the Carvery open tonight, is it?
Toby's Carvery, yeah. Pep Talk sponsors, or our good friend Stu, sponsored by Toby's Carvery. Where else can you get a Carvery for a £5 and off a meal ticket? You know, that sort of thing.
Carvery and then the bingo. It'll be a great night for Pep.
But you're right, by the way. I did do all the cooking over Christmas. I'm a dab hand. My tactic, by the way, if anyone's interested, is to get it all done in advance. So actually the whole thing is done by Christmas Eve. And I just eat for a couple of days. So we just eat the Christmas dinner, reheat it up. Don't have to do anything on the day.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's my tactic. Cool. Let's crack straight on. Lots of questions for a surprisingly short week. One or two of them might upset you. I read through these and thought, I know what you're gonna say, and you're gonna bite some heads off this evening. I actually got sent one that I haven't put on here, by the way, from someone who's just in the chat there, Stu, who has basically said, whether he should get rid of Cunha straight away because he already regrets bringing him in. Manchester United being a flop in his eyes, that sort of thing. So if you do have anything to say on that, we can bring it in a bit later, I'm sure. A little bit there. But yeah, it's a bit, actually that was a bit of a disappointment, wasn't it? The last couple of games of Cunha. I was kind of hoping we might get a quick win out of that one, but sadly not.
Yeah, United. I mean, I don't know what to make of it at the moment. I didn't really see much of the game United, so I can't really comment too much. I mean, it wasn't a huge surprise to me, to be honest. Last night, I mean, I still think Cunha is generally a good pick. I mean, we can talk about him more in a bit, I suppose, but I still think he's generally a good pick. But yeah, it wasn't a big surprise to me last night, really, unfortunately.
I mean, Leeds. Is it Leeds and Burnley next? You can't do anything against that, can you? You just got to accept that you're in.
No, I mean, weirdly, I view these games more positively than I do Wolves at home.
Okay.
Wolves have been okay the last few weeks for one. They've been okay and they've been defensively pretty good. I just think these away games generally. I mean, United is so unpredictable. We know that. I mean, the only thing that makes it worse for United right now is we've got so many injuries. The team is destroyed, and obviously people at AFCON and so on and so on. But generally, you don't really know what to read into these games. The manager just comes up with these different tactical plans and all sorts. And generally, in these away games, when teams have a go at us, it's usually a bit better for us. I think Leeds away and Burnley away is actually really, really about as good as it gets, is what it feels like at the moment on paper. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, very interesting. But yeah, keeping faith in here anyway. Well, let's start. I think the player that people probably want to talk about the most is one that has come back with a vengeance. And it's a frustrating thing, isn't it? Because it's there are two players that in my head, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that there's a very probable chance that you would just not sell throughout the season unless you absolutely had to. And one was Gabriel, and one was Bruno. And like, we're in a situation where we don't have either at this point in time. Wasn't particularly clear whether he was going to play that last fixture or certainly finish it. And of course, he's already back with a 15-point haul. So as you can imagine, people are quite excited about that. And lots of, I don't know whether you've seen people and what they did last week, but I've saw a lot of people moving from Timber to Gabriel, and a lot of other people maybe even dumping Van Dijk early and that sort of thing. And the flavour is still there this week as well. So the first question, just jump on Gabriel now. Playing the three worst teams for conceding set pieces. I've seen that graphic go around a fair bit today. Also, would you double up with Timber? And FPL Easy, who's I think almost deliberately trying to upset you, is Van Dijk to Gabriel a no-brainer? I was thinking to myself, I don't think you'll say yes to that. So yeah, what are your thoughts? It's a funny one, isn't it? I have my own particular team situation with this player, so we'll talk about it later on. But I know that a lot of people have been keeping a few pennies aside. He's already gone up 0.2, isn't he?
I think, yeah.
Since the injury, anyway, he went straight up.
Yeah, which is very annoying, isn't it? I mean,
very annoying.
I was looking at his overall. I don't know what it is now. It's probably ridiculous, but it was only like 15% on the overall ownership yesterday. And obviously, a lot of that is still, probably the biggest chunk of that is still just dead teams or people that have left him in. Well, of course it is. In fact, because he hasn't actually been brought in by all that many yet, and it was only like 150,000 brought him in yesterday, and that led to another rise. It's all proportional, isn't it? I can't remember how these things work, but it's all sort of proportional with kind of existing ownership and the fact that of active players that hardly anyone owned him. So it doesn't take much to, as you say, to rise again in one day. Which is, so it's going to be tough. I mean, the sort of separate point to this, by the way, is like team value doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Like, I know that that's a more complex discussion, but it's better in these really complex, nuanced discussions to actually be pretty binary about it, in my view, because the value of team value is it's not going to appear or manifest in this kind of nuanced way, and you never really know what it's done for you anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, a couple of decisions here or there that gain you 10 points or whatever, where you've not considered team value, or that it isn't, that's going to be worth more than a bit of extra team value over the season. It's just so fine grained. We know from experience that you haven't got enough to buy someone, so you buy someone else. And how often is that cheaper person going to do better anyway, or is the whole path that you go down going to be better anyway? It's so. I just think it's really straightforward to sort of say team value doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if you buy Gabriel now for 6.4 or whatever it is, 6.5, or if you buy him for 7 million in 3 weeks, because what's more important over those 3 weeks is to maximize your points. Because yeah, that 0.5 isn't enough of a difference. You don't know how, you don't know what impact that's going to have long term, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, standalone Gabriel is still remarkably a ridiculously good value pick at £7 million. Like, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I'm saying? And I know that's really obvious, and you probably agree or whatever, but that's the point. I think that's an important thing to say, because loads of people are saying like, "Oh, I can't take this." These inevitable 3 rises or 4 rises, and people just go insane. They lose all kinds of kind of rationality, and it doesn't matter at all. So yeah, it's a bit frustrating. It's a bit annoying, but even me, where it's just a bit annoying, that's actually too much. Like, it isn't even as annoying as I feel it is when it's just a little bit, because it means nothing. Go on, I'll let you speak before I.
Well, what I was going to say, I mean, I do broadly agree with you. I think the thing that probably is, I'm seeing whenever I see the kind of teams that people are sending us, or teams in our own SKLW squad, and the kind of patterns that are emerging, it's less of an issue for most people at the moment about value per se, and it's more about the kind of structural problems that they have bedded in with. So, for example, in my team and quite a few others, I think one of the reasons why, unless Hugo the Boss does well tomorrow, it's looking like quite a structural problem, that, because you've got often in a lot of teams, I'm seeing, for example, 3 fairly expensive midfielders, 2 expensive strikers, some quite heavy defenders, etc. And there's the cheap picks at the moment are quite bad, especially in midfield and so on, and maybe excluding Calvert-Lewin up top. There's really not much around, so people are scratching around, and I think that's a little bit of what's why people are getting nervy at the moment. That, and I see a lot of people in the chat actually this evening already saying, "Oh, it's important to keep some money back so that you can go Cunha to Bruno. Oh, it's important to keep some money back so that you can make sure you get Cole Palmer. Oh, it's important to keep some money back because so you can do Van Dijk to Gabriel." So it's probably that's trying to get people a bit itchy,
I know, I know, and I agree. And this is an important point, because I still think it's still wrong, and it's important to say that, like, I completely get it, because I look at my team and look ahead, obviously, and I'm looking ahead in 3 or 4 weeks when it's like, okay, when do I want Bruno? Do I want Palmer in 22 or 24? And yes, generally speaking, yes, I do. And how am I going to make that work? Because it is important to have a kind of plan. You do want to know what moving around those pieces looks like. However, it's more likely that those kind of picks that you think you'll want in 4 or 5 weeks will change, versus how likely it is, how much of a benefit it would be to, for example, get Gabriel in now just to get the transfer, to lose the 4 points because it's a hit, or to kind of, and planning ahead for things that could happen in 4 or 5 weeks. Like, it's more likely things will change and be different by then. And even if also I think it's still generally more beneficial to have a more flexible plan, or acknowledge that, okay, actually, it might be that I do have to sell Saka to get Palmer, and then maybe that's not the route that at the moment I ideally want to go. Or maybe, I do need to downgrade to like a Soboslai or someone that I didn't necessarily want in 22, rather than a simple defender swap. You know what I mean? And so that doesn't seem like, we don't believe right now that that's going to be the better thing, because we know what we know right now. But in 4 weeks, it will be different. And so this comes back to the general point about, this team values is intertwined with the general question of, do we jump onto Gabriel now? I can't remember what my original point was going to be there, in terms of, like, it's more important, obviously, to maximize what you think that, your points are going to get now, this week and next week and the week after, for example, over this next 4 weeks, as in the period before this big shift in 2022. And I mean, it's a little bit linked to my moves with the double Newcastle that I'll talk about in a bit. Yeah. In terms of like actually what's in front of you and what's pretty solid right now, and what kind of, because every week is so important. It isn't 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That's a huge amount of points, huge amount of the season. Rather than, it's always a real dangerous thing thinking about what it looks like in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, and thinking what it looks like and making your moves based around that.
Yeah, do you know what? On that, I don't know if you mind me bringing something in, and something actually that's just dropped in the chat is quite helpful to the point I was going to add here. Is that someone's mentioned here, Peter has mentioned about in 3 or 4 weeks we might want players like Bruno, Sarr, and Jai, and so on and so on. And actually, to underline your point that you made a minute ago, I mean, just think how it felt a few weeks back, how everyone was absolutely convinced that it was essential to get Hugo Ekitike into their teams, or it was essential at the time. It felt really important to people how important it was to get bloody hell, what's his name, O'Reilly,
Yes,
into their teams. And already, I would personally, we can come to that a bit later, but I've been watching him, and I don't know. There's a bit of me that even regrets that pick a little bit, because he I don't know. He stands far forward, sure, but in terms of actual impact,
Yeah.
I've been a little bit disappointed in some ways and some or another. So it's just worth remembering that, because I mean, Pieter mentions there about Njai. Now I think Njai has got dropped. He's just got injured, by the way, so he might come back early. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But he I'm pretty sure is 6.2. Now, if he was around at the moment, Minteh to him would be the most straightforward move known to man. It would be so easy. So yeah, anyway, point being, it's worth just remembering some of these case studies, because there is always someone else, as you say. But yeah, go on, sorry.
No, exactly. And you're so right. And it leads exactly on to what I was going to say. You know, I tweeted something last night or the night before or something that sounded kind of probably pretty vacuous, but meant something more in my head. And it was that I said, and obviously it sounded arrogant as well, but to me it's quite fascinating. I said that the vast majority of FPL players spend the whole season bringing in last week's points, which is absolutely fascinating, really. And also it should give you a lot of hope about like what you're playing against, because I mean, so the reason that got me thinking about that was because exactly what you mentioned, O'Reilly, right? I am now in a position where, which is remarkable, given that we've just been given 5 free transfers, but for a couple of reasons, where I look at my team now this week, I mean, it's okay, you know, my team's okay. But when I look at my team this week, next week, the week after, and I do plan ahead and I think about 22, 23, my team right now feels right on the edge.
Yeah, same. I was thinking that, yeah.
It feels so frail, fragile, and it feels behind. And it's this, you've got to be so objective in how you think about what the future points are, and how you can get, I don't even want to say get ahead, because that's kind of doesn't mean anything, but it's about being really objective and looking at the future points and the optimal moves and what pulls you in the right direction. And so, you know, for me, 2 things really basically have put me in this position where I feels really fragile and feels behind. And that was basically KDH, where it was essentially sort of 2 or 3 transfers, like my moves, my 5 free transfers, and that structure that I moved to at the time was all based around KDH being a brilliant pick that I was happy to play, you know, for most weeks or whatever. So that was my structure, was built around that. And then obviously he got injured immediately. I knew there was another one, because yeah, when I thought Hall was going off last night, it was going to be the 4th time I brought in a player who'd gone off injured. It would have been. That's why I was going to be really annoyed. I'll come to that later, but Hall didn't get injured, at least for that. But yeah, so KDH, and also it was O'Reilly, as you say, where I my perception of O'Reilly was probably too high, and I did feel like there are some players where I feel like they can be so dangerous that you really want to be on board, because the season's so short. You want to be on board of these players who you think can score a lot of goals and are in a great team, and you know, I think the minutes are really good and they're going to get clean sheets, etc. So the ceiling is insane. And obviously, in hindsight, I think I shifted too much and I put too much into that. Essentially, almost last week's points. I mean, it wasn't really, but you know what I mean. Now I'm in this position where I don't have any transfers left. Probably speaking for a lot of people as well. I don't know about you, but you know, I've got 1 transfer this week. You've got 2.
3, sorry.
Right. Okay. So you're in a much better position, at least in that sense. I know you've got injuries.
Well, wait and see when you see the team,
mate. But you see how easy it is to just slip into it's so easy to slip into a structure where you're behind. And when you're behind, it's so difficult to get back ahead. It's almost impossible without hits, which I don't like to do. And you know, obviously hits are bad. You lose points. So, you know, coming back to this point about Gabriel, again, it's about being really objective. Like, pull yourself away from last week. Just look forward, look ahead. Now, I know Gabriel is an amazing pick. He is one of the best picks in the game. The question of whether you need to go there straight away depends entirely on your team, how many transfers you have, who you already have from Arsenal, what your weak spots are. And it's got nothing to do with the points that he's already got. Now, I know that he's got some, he's got great goal threat. I mean, take me, for example, I've got Timber. I think if you don't have this, we'll sort of talk about this in a second in terms of if you don't have any Arsenal defence, obviously he's then more of a priority. But what's he got? He's got Bournemouth. So he's got Bournemouth away. I mean, you've got to look at it really objectively. He's got Bournemouth away. I thought watching them, just as this is only a small point, but just thinking about the fixtures in general, but I just thought watching them against Chelsea, I did watch a lot of that game because I was at the pub. I thought they looked miles better than they have done for weeks. They tore Chelsea apart. They had 5 big chances in the first half. They ripped Chelsea apart from I know Chelsea had chances as well, but they were really good. A few players stood out as well. We can probably talk about Bournemouth at some point, but then they've got Liverpool at home, which is not a good fixture. Yes, they can clean anywhere and blah blah. It's still not a good fixture. And then they got Forest and they got Man United. So again, to what extent is bringing Gabriel? Is it going to set you back a bit? Because you are then, it depends who it's for and so on. I've got Timber and Raya, so it's not. I mean, this coincides with a few questions, doesn't it? Because I wouldn't replace Timber with him myself, because again, that's shifting in my eyes your whole team in sort of your potential for moves and your flexibility and your power and your strength in transfers back a bit, just to get this slight improvement, when actually Timber could easily outscore Gabriel in the next 2 or 3 fixtures, could easily. And Timber's still got miles better, like non-pen XGI than any other defender, by the way. So is that all really obvious? But it's so much about like pulling yourself away from like last week's points and just looking forward. Like, I know I'm looking now. I can't see a way for me, unfortunately, probably, where Gabriel comes in for me at all before like game week 23 or 24, probably. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that, because that's because other parts of my team, in my eyes, are bigger upgrades.
Yeah.
It's really simple. So, for example, I might look at an Everton defender this week, because they've got their next 2 fixtures are Brentford at home, Wolves at home. I knew that would wind you up. No, just take a deep breath. And you can piss off anyway. You got your lucky 10 points from Keane. Keane owners complaining. It's like that bloody Mel Gibson meme.
I think we're allowed now. Now is
absolutely not. So where I've got someone like, you might have a Senesi still, you might have like, I've got Lacroix, I've got Van Dijk, I've got these players who, I don't like at the moment. Their fixtures are getting worse. So bringing in, it's really obvious, but bringing in, for example, an Everton defender with your one transfer, for me, is a way bigger upgrade than switching things around massively to get Gabriel in for 2 fixtures that are not good fixtures, or for upgrading Timber. So that was the kind of the point of that whole tweet. I was just thinking about it, like, well, all these people now flooding to get Gabriel when it's probably a suboptimal move. That's the simple point, is what I'm saying. Again, for want of a better word, and I'm not talking about suboptimal as in just data. It's just a way of describing. I'm not talking about models. It's likely a suboptimal move for many people and most people. You've got to have a lot of free transfers at the moment, in my eyes, to bring Gabriel in and say that it's a good move, because team value doesn't matter. The next 2 fixtures are not good. It's more likely that you've got other upgrades, and those upgrades that are not necessarily just upgrades just for a player, but can be an upgrade for a whole structure that could subsequently allow, for example, a more easy Palmer in 22 or 24, keeping a Saka, getting a better, all this sort of stuff, getting a better keeper. One transfer changes the whole structure and future and path of your whole team. And so it's a huge thing. And I just think everyone generally has to look forward more, you know what I mean, than bringing in Gabriel just because he happened to score his goal last night. And by the way, yes, he's got great goal threat. And yes, even this thing about the next 3 teams being the most conceded set pieces. Well, first of all, Liverpool have just fired the set piece coach. So that will change. And it'll probably change straight away. But second of all, it's still very unlikely for any defender. Doesn't matter how good you are and how good you are at set piece. It's still very unlikely you're going to score, game to game. So it's playing out of fear. If you bring in Gabriel in because you think he's going to score, he's going to score. It's a centre back playing in the Premier League, so it's much more likely that he won't score in the next 3 games. So again, that lends to how can you move your team forward?
Yeah. What's interesting about this is that I agree with everything you say, and there's still a chance that I do bring him in.
Not many people have got 3 free transfers right now.
But my reason, by the way, and someone in the chat is asking us to wrap it up. I'm sorry. Apologies that we're keeping you. But no, yeah, sorry, that was a bit flippant actually. We'll move on shortly. But the reason being is that so I'm in a situation where okay, so Minteh doesn't really go to anyone. He's the biggest problem. Weirdly, the biggest problem in my team is that I've got 2 kind of dog cheap midfielders that I kind of can't move on from because I plugged too much money in expensive midfielders and that sort of thing. And it's a problem. And one of the only routes out of it, in a sense, sorry, I'm thinking more about the players that I definitely know that I want in the future. And if Keane, for example, is injured, the best defender that I can bring in would be Gabriel, right? So it's a very particular circumstance. But to answer the questions that are actually on the screen, I don't think it is a no-brainer, no. But is he probably the best defender that you can bring in? Unless maybe, I suppose there's a case, isn't there, in the context right at the moment that you could say Tarkowski for the next few weeks, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's not a bad move per se, is it? But you have to accept that there's a good chance in the next 3 fixtures that probably 2 of them they might not clean. Something along those lines would be a reasonable point to make. If it's going to fix you for the long term, then I get it. I think the fitness thing, by the way, is another point that we probably won't dwell on it because it will definitely upset the chat. But that is something to keep an eye on as well. He did still get cramped, didn't he, at the end of the game, and he is still recovering. Would expect him to at least miss something in the next couple of weeks. It might be just the cup game, but there is that discussion as well.
Yeah, sorry, and no, it's fine. And yeah, I guess we are moving on. It wasn't the kind of the point of everything I'm saying, but it's not just about Gabriel. It's about everyone. It's about the moves and it's about the team. So and we've got a lot of questions here about Van Dijk, and Gabriel and so on. So
yeah,
that's more the point. If thinking about Van Dijk, for example, not many people have got him, so we won't talk about that for long. But it's looking at it is difficult because I've completely lost faith in Van Dijk. But it's looking at, for example, those individual fixtures and how does it compare to the other players in your team? I mean, we'll talk about that with my team when we get there in a second. But he's got Fulham away this week, which is okay. Yeah. But then in like 3 weeks, he's got Burnley at home. And it's very frustrating, by the way, Van Dijk, because you keep saving these players for these good fixtures. But I mean, Burnley at home as a centre-back is about as good as you get, isn't it, on paper? And can you manoeuvre it so that you get that game out of him?
Yeah. So well, if Keane's injured, then I'm locked into running off into the sunset with you with Van Dijk, whether I like it or not, unfortunately. Just onto midfield, if I can, because I suppose a popular player, relatively popular player that's that kind of gone down this week. I think it's almost certain that he won't be back for the next fixture. And I've been on this since game week 6. Is Minteh. But actually, what I wanted to turn it into is a little bit more of a route just to talk about the lack of good midfield picks, or the perceived lack of good midfield picks, because obviously you brought in one of the interesting options there in midfield last week, and you can talk about that in a minute. But yeah, so there's a kind of a triple question here, which I'll talk about as one, and then we can go wherever we like with it. What to do with Minteh? Not much in the bank. I mean, I'm not in a wildly different position to that, but fortunately a few transfers. If Minteh is likely out again, how do you rank Gordon, Szoboszlai, Cherki, and Rodgers as replacements? That's from our very own FPL Jossie. And does the lack of good midfield picks change your thoughts on structure and formation at the moment there as well? So yeah, there's a few things in there, and also just to say thank you to the chat and the viewers generally who send in some excellent questions, as they always do. That's really helpful, and we'll repay you by staying here and talking about things. And if you could just press like as well. That'd be very nice. Thank you very much. But where do you want to start with this? So I know that you're not someone who fell into the I'm going to buy a wide winger trap. Sadly, I did. But yeah, what do you think? There aren't many. I looked down the list of. So, for example, Minteh direct with one transfer, I can get up to 6.7, right? You want to see the dog bad list of midfielders in that list. It's absolutely awful. So you can't get to Rodgers, you can't get to Szoboszlai, you can't get to Cherky if you've got a triple up, you can't get to Gordon. So it's sorry, yeah. So
You tell us about Minteh first, because I haven't obviously thought about Minteh really at all, other than watching from afar and kind of hoping he doesn't do much, and kind of feeling, to be honest, relatively confident that he won't do much. I mean, one thing, by the way, about Minteh, I did send you the same quotes. I know Neil shared them on Scout, but it's a bit concerning when the manager mentions personal issues, and it's obviously it's one that we talked about before, and it's like the ultimate trap in FPL when you don't know something's going on behind the scenes, and this is a potential reason for like someone being out of form. Although I didn't see the last game, but apparently he looked great when he came on, so I don't know if he's over that now. But yeah, I've obviously just been watching. I mean, I've moved off that structure as well in terms of, at the moment, I'm on more of a 4-4-2, so I've not even been looking at the cheap mids at all. And obviously, but I do have Gordon. We'll talk about Gordon in a second. He is a bit of a winger, although at least he's got penalties. Yeah. So yeah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so it is. So he wasn't meant to be. It reminds me of that line from Clark's. I wasn't even meant to be here today. But Minteh wasn't supposed to stay this long. But other problems emerge, don't they? And he's kind of stuck around, unfortunately, and been one of those players to rotate in and out and that sort of thing. And this was the one that people were thinking, oh, I might just hold him for that one more, because that Burnley at home this week, etc. And it looks pretty strongly like that's not going to happen. I don't actually remember or know the nature of the injury, but he went off in such a way where it sounds very unlikely that he'll be around for the Burnley fixture. And I agree with you. He's not someone. When I bought him in, by the way, which is game week 6, it looked like quite an interesting player, because he wasn't much more than Anton Stack and players like that. So at the time,
he looked great. He looked
great. But you know, it was meant to have been moved on by now, and it's just other problems have emerged. But yeah, to answer the question, it is a real problem. To do anything with one transfer. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but there really isn't anyone I would like below him, or even shortly up from him. But if you've got perhaps 500,000 or more in the, maybe a little bit more, you can start to reach players like, there is an argument for Enzo a little bit if with Chelsea's fixtures coming up. Maybe I can't say I've watched him an awful lot lately, and he was benched a couple of times, wasn't he? Which does worry me. The European turnarounds and that sort of thing. You got Szoboszlai, who's maybe, what is he, 0.8 more. So again, that won't help FPL Grimes here. He's someone I'm keenly watching, even though it's sort of after arguably some of the best fixtures, you might argue, but he's still someone where, because of his avenues to points, is worth a little watch. But yeah, in terms of people mentioning cheaper picks, it is a real struggle. I can see lots of names that are being chucked around that I just don't really consider people as anyone I would go to. I mean, Paquetá, Kudus, because there's a belief that he's on penalties and nailed. And the fixtures are not bad, to be fair. Garner's being talked about, and I get it. Garner, he right at the start of the season, we said he's in that kind of category of 5 million midfielders who can get sort of 4 points a game and the occasional extra return. So I don't think he's greatly any worse than Anderson, but personally, I have him as well. So it's I don't want 2 of these rank bad mids. So what I'm looking at doing probably is just getting out of dodge here. I'm likely just to drop him down to an absolute nobody, and then put the money into another space. We will look at that a little bit later on, but it might mean that I'm forced into a situation where, for a while, I have a third forward, which we'll talk about a bit later on, because that is an option. And then there's the possibility of bumping up one of the defenders in the short term. But unfortunately, a lot of the players that we like are just not there at the moment, you know, the Njais and the SARS and all these kind of players. So I think either biting the bullet and just accepting that you have to plug in someone for 3 or 4 weeks is one thing. I mean, Diego Gomez is being mentioned in the chat. Do you know what? I did look him up earlier on. It's a strange one. So you might not have thought about him ever, which is fair enough. But he's what is he, 4.9 or something like that for Brighton? He gets reasonably good minutes, and he's an attacking player. So, but again, I don't know. I don't think I can deal with Brighton anymore, so I can't do it myself. But I'll come over to you. I mean, do you like any of those names mentioned? Look, I'm trying to think of anyone else here. I mean, if I had enough, maybe I would consider a Gordon or a Rodgers, but it's quite hard work to make it happen in my case. The obvious way to do it, actually, for some of the managers in here, you might just need to accept that someone like Hugo, you might need to downgrade him in order to move funds around. And that's going to be a tricky decision to make on Friday or Saturday as well.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through. I mean, we've seen on Twitter that, especially sort of the analytics crowd, everyone was getting Enzo Lefebvre, weren't they? Because, fine, he's on penalties or whatever. But I mean, it's pretty desperate stuff, isn't it? When everyone's getting Enzo Lefebvre and playing him, actually expecting much to happen. But yeah, there's such a dearth of the midfielders right now at this time and this price, which is kind of why I moved to 4-4-2 a few weeks ago. So it's hard to look at any of those midfielders and think, again, take someone like a Tarkowski, who's roughly that price because he's like 5'6" or whatever, or 5'7". You know what I mean? It's hard to look at anyone like that. It's hard to look at anyone, defender that defcons, because someone like Anderson, who it's just been no appeal to me whatsoever for ages, no matter what, if it's just no appeal to me. It's blocked out because he's just. I know he did look better a few weeks ago. Don't get me wrong. He looked like he had more avenues and maybe even pens and stuff like that. But at the moment, it's just defcon. So it's hard to look at any of these midfielders where that's what it is. Where there are defenders who can get clean sheets as well as defcon. There's just so much value there. And again, like we said before, it facilitates these players that everyone's kind of 7 million plus. I mean, I was just looking, again, it's a shame about Bournemouth. It's a bit of a shame about Bournemouth because I know that from memory that their fixtures are now terrible because I've just sold Senesi and Semenyo for other reasons. But, I mean, well, I look at, actually, they're not that bad. They've got Arsenal this week. But, it's worth mentioning that I didn't watch it. I was in a pub, but I was quite pleasantly surprised by what I was seeing by Cliver whenever I looked up. I thought, wow, he's looking sharp. And obviously all of this is in the context of Semenyo is probably going to play one more game and then he's gone. So things change when your main man leaves, obviously minutes-wise, but also people having to step up. Because the other obvious one is Tavernier there as well. Just someone to think about, because I think Tavernier has always appealed to me as a good pick and a good player. Because he's a goal-scoring type player. He's 5.6, I was just looking now. And obviously, again, I'm not really in the know at the moment with Bournemouth outside of Semenyo, but I would imagine that he's pretty nailed once Semenyo leaves. I do think Semenyo will play this week, by the way, because if he's going to City, which it looks likely, they'll want him to play against Arsenal, won't they? City will want Semenyo to play against Arsenal. Outside of that, I can't really see. You mentioned Cherky, but he's 6.7. So yeah, I mean, Kudus. I can see Kudus popping up on FPL review, a lot already. So he's going to get popular. And the fixtures are good, and he's a good player. It's just difficult because I don't think I've personally seen anything. I at least need to see something that I believe in, and I haven't really seen it with Kudus. But again, if you're making a transfer for that price, you are committing to having that price point, aren't you? Because transfers are so precious right now. So that's it. It's not, the question is what structure do you want? Although having said that, again, with all these really expensive picks going up like Bruno and Palmer and so on, I think we're all going to, and even in a 4-4-2, you're going to need to have like a cheaper mid.
Yep.
So, and yeah. Soboslai is. I don't know if is he in the same conversation. I think he's
6'7". Yeah, so people might be able to get there. I mean, I can still get there just about. Yeah, but I think this just feeds into that question from Bonehead there about structure, because it really is one of those ones where I'm sure in 3 or 4 weeks' time everything will have changed again. But at the moment, it's very hard to find what you're looking at. You are going to be, I think, everyone who has 4 midfielders is probably going to have one spot that's a semi-volatile kind of punt spot, because I think the other thing is that I don't think any of us necessarily expected to be in a position where we have, like that Foden spot, for example, and that Ekitike spot, for example, like those are two spots where you might have ordinarily earlier, a few, about a month or so, been on a sort of 6-5 player in each position, and now they're around about 8. So we are sort of grinding out situations where we probably are playing a 4-5 defender quite frequently, or are playing a DEFCON midfielder quite regularly, and we have to try and work out whether that's right. And that's why I've never heard Garner mentioned in our chat before, and yet he's been mentioned about 6 times. So it just goes to show the situation. So for what it's worth, I don't think it's any worse than Anderson. In fact, I think he probably is a better pick than Anderson at this point in time. Sadly, somebody's got him, because just watching the two players, there's not a great deal of difference there, and so on. So it's I think it's a tricky one.
It's worth mentioning, by the way, just very quickly, Reinders as well. Just because I've not really seen him get talked about at the moment, but he's 5.2 Reinders. If people are looking for something really cheap, because even Cherky, I think, was just looking then was like 6.7 or something. I quite like what I've seen from Reinders recently.
I don't hate
First of all, a couple of weeks ago, he actually came out and said, and I do like these sort of things sometimes, it's important to know what's going on, what they're thinking tactics wise. And he said, I need to improve my sort of decision making a little bit, get into those better positions. I know I can finish. I know I'm a goal scorer. I've got to add these goals. He was really talking about goals and adding these numbers, and he's done it before in Italy. And then that's what he's been doing. Obviously only in the last 2. He's got 7, 1, 3, 8, 8. So the last 2 he scored, I remembered. And obviously in the last game, I think it was against Forest, wasn't it? And obviously it was like 60 to 70 minutes. It's not sensational minutes wise, but I think he's becoming more and more important, and he has been starting recently. Did you notice though, in that last game, it was Pep Linders, wasn't it? They suggested that had made that change, that tactical change at half time, where City were getting frustrated and Haaland was isolated. And they basically just put Reinders up front with Haaland as an extra man. And Reinders then scored straight away, and he ran up to Pep Linders and celebrated with him and said, thank you, blah, blah, blah. That's quite significant as well, because that shows that gives you, because Pep's always in that situation, frustrated and Haaland isolated, and that's going to come up a lot in a lot of fixtures for them. So to have that option in Reinders where you can have him in that dangerous 8 position anyway, and basically just move him up front, that increases his value to the team, and also obviously his chances of scoring goals. I mean, the guy is a ridiculously good finisher. He is a goal scorer, so it's worth mentioning for 5.2, because that's cheaper than people like Enzo Lefebvre and Anderson, and so.
Yeah, it's cheaper than you're right. It's just about cheaper than Anderson. It's about the same price as Xhaka, I think, someone like that. So it's it's an interesting one. Actually, FPL Easy, who asked one of the questions this week, he said he kept the faith. I reckon, Easy, it's because you you had other problems, but no, absolutely, I'm sure you did keep the faith. No, I don't want to demean your good decision making by any means. Actually, just before we move on to the next question, there, did you want to talk about Gordon at all? Because obviously he's a name that's on the list there alongside Cherky, Szoboszlai, and Rodgers. Actually, your thought? I mean, we've talked about some of those players a little bit, but if you want to say anything on why you went Gordon, whether you still rate that, and actually a word. I think Rodgers starts a nice run of fixtures this week. He's 7.4, by the way. I had no idea he was that expensive, which is a bit annoying, because if he'd been a bit cheaper, I might have considered it. But
yeah, I'm still not quite there on Rodgers. Yeah. I'm just not quite there on. I know he's a great player and a great pick, and I mean, I think it's already been said that like a significant chunk of his points are just from 3 games. He's got 3 15s with all his braces, and then he's done pretty much nothing else in the other ones. I'm just not convinced by his avenues and stuff. And Emre's always tweaking stuff tactically, and he's kind of moving all over the place, all his different jobs. I don't know. He's definitely a good pick. I'm just not enamored. I'm always sort of looking for something more. Gordon's a funny one because, I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think I've ever owned him before, in my life.
Ooh, really?
Until this week. I don't think so. I might be wrong. I can't remember. I don't remember ever owning him before. He's a funny one because, I mean, it's also funny because Newcastle fans hate him at the moment, and they seem to. Yeah, it's a complete, for me, example of kind of beware of fans as usual. I don't take any notice of that whatsoever. And it's probably natural that they lean towards dislike because he wanted to leave, didn't he? He wanted to go to Liverpool, a year and a half ago, a year ago, whatever, and it's not gone through. And I understand there are other things. So Newcastle fans, don't bite my head off. I understand that I think there's a suggestion he's not been trying enough and he moans a lot and all that stuff, and that's fine. For me, it just looked like he was starting to bubble a bit, like there was some form starting to return. It has looked like that for a few weeks. And I like that. It's the same thing with Hall, the two Newcastle players. I quite like the timing of it. Just get the fixtures up quickly, but it was obviously it's slightly risky with Gordon because the minutes aren't really solid. But Alanga was injured this week, and he's possibly injured still next week. That helps a fair bit because Murphy, although he's great, is getting on a bit, and I think he's the one who's more likely to be replaced or swapped around than Barnes. The managers generally than Gordon. The managers always generally kind of loved him, and he's just one of these players that when he's on it, he really he's really aggressive in going for it, and he shoots a lot, he crosses a lot, blah blah blah, and he's on penalties. We know he's on penalties when he's on the pitch, which I don't think. I'm not sure. Maybe Voltemade. I mean, I know late risers talked about does he not get on with Voltemade, and I'm not sure. We just had those two celebrations when he set him up twice against Chelsea. They didn't celebrate together at all, which was a bit weird. Anyway, that's just not important, rambling on. But the fixtures, I mean, basically, I felt good about his minutes, good enough. I think he's going to start because he's in that I just feel like he's in that sort of phase where he's on the up. I like it when someone's on the up. He looks determined. He looks determined. He looks kind of fitter. He's just had his next fixtures of Palace at home, which looks a lot better than normal right now. Even more so because, and this is relevant to a couple of teams, but Newcastle have got an extra 2 days rest. I mean, Palace are all over the place at the moment. So Palace at home is much better than it was. Palace have got players missing, hardly any rest, and then he's got Leeds, Wolves, and Villa at home. And so I don't know really. It was a bit of a punt on Gordon, a little bit of it, but I feel like there's just combined with the fixtures, in versus like a Szoboszlai. I'm not entirely convinced that Szoboszlai at the moment. I do think he's a good pick. I do like him. I think he is on penalties and a lot of set pieces and stuff. It's just that Liverpool are terrible at the moment. I mean, Ekitike is fantastic and Wirtz is brilliant, but Liverpool are really bad. I'm not seeing anything from them really at the moment. And so Szoboszlai seems to take a lot for him to get any share. And then they've obviously got Arsenal in a week or two, haven't they? So I just felt with a really solid 4 or 5 fixtures, there was enough there with him being on penalties as well to go there. Don't know, what do you think about?
No, I think so much, isn't it, is about timing. And I think your situation last week, it's a very reasonable bet to make, isn't it? It's a player that has quality, has shown signs of form in a difficult fixture against Chelsea. He's getting better. Well, what was it? 90 minutes followed by another 80 last night. It's pretty good. I know that there's a bit of a pile up, isn't there? So you'd have to expect that one of those games is going to hit a 70 or something like that. But given the real lack of options at this point with a player with great fixtures and penalties, it's a very reasonable bet to make, isn't it? So I think it's reflective of that situation.
Yeah, it just felt like a reasonable bet. Sorry, exactly like you say, just a reasonable bet. I don't know why he's he looked tired again when he came off last night, and I don't really get why is he not I don't really understand the fitness. I don't really know why he's not looking. He's had this reasonable amount of rest and stuff. I don't know why he can't just pump out 90 minutes like I'm sure he used to be able to do. Yeah. So we'll see.
By the way, I should say I've been trying to react to this in case I'd missed some sort of announcement, but there is sort of flutterings in the background about Maresca still going on. But I don't know whether anything has been announced, but 1 or 2 people have said that he's leaving, but most of the information out there seems to be that it's just ongoing talks at board level and that kind of stuff at the moment. So keep an eye on that one, because obviously it affects some of the picks that we have. Hopefully he doesn't go cold on Big Bob Sanchez. That would be another disaster that I need to avoid. And of course it might do something about Cole Palmer and that sort of thing. So we'll see what happens there. Remaining questions, so then we'll get on to our teams, because I did say that we were going to be trying to keep it short. I mean, we did a Thiago to Bowen question last week, so we won't talk about this greatly, but I still think he looks good. We're in a bit of a West Ham are in a bit of a situation at the moment where they can't really buy a win, but they are showing signs of improvement. But it's mainly defensively that's the problem, and of course, I think Todibo went off injured yesterday as well, so they are going to need to reinforce there. So yeah, it is tricky, but I think this is less about Bowen and more about Thiago, really. If you have him and he's still fit and plays, is it tomorrow? Presumably. I don't know where unless I was really flushed with transfers, I wouldn't be that tempted to do anything on that personally. I think I should imagine you've got bigger problems than that, but I don't know what you think, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, I should imagine you've got bigger problems than that. Yeah, I mean, Thiago, my guess is he's fine this week. He's fine to play. I mean, people talked about this news yesterday, but it wasn't really news actually. I think it's just quotes that had already come out and like resurfaced. Neil, for example, had those incorporated into his team predictions already way before all that had come out, and he talked about him kind of playing through some pain or being a bit of I think he referred to a knock from 2 weeks ago though. And then obviously, I think if he was struggling, he didn't come off in the last game, Thiago, when they were 3-1 up. And it was the last minute. The game was over. He still didn't come off. So he can't have been struggling that much. And then that's Saturday and he doesn't play till Thursday. So you'd think that was fine. However, they then play Thursday to Sunday. So I am concerned about his minutes for Sunday, and I will be looking into that. And my transfers will probably be based on the idea that I might even bench him this week. I mean, I don't think he's ever. I think this week's probably the worst one. We could do with Lego Mane's map of like when the rest is. I know they've obviously got games midweek again. I would imagine that really the only problem is actually just this week, if there is one. I mean, he might just be fine to play anyway. I don't really know. None of us know why he wouldn't be, why he isn't. He always looks fit, big sort of fit young guy, So I still think he's a great pick. He could have easily. I was obviously annoyed. It's annoying for me because I'm a non-Ekatike owner, so I've got to sit through these terrifying matches like tomorrow and the next one especially. So Leeds and then Fulham, and Thiago could have easily double or triple hauled in that 4-1 win.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and that would have been really good because then at least you can sit on a bit of a cushion and be like, right, I can take what Ekatike is going to do to me for the next couple now because so it's frustrating and annoying that he only got that. And then I mean, tomorrow's a difficult one to read because they're playing Spurs again. They didn't get a look in against Spurs because obviously it's the battle of the managers, isn't it? And I didn't know which way that would go in the sense of they both know each other inside out, and that unfortunately for Brentford players and owners like me in the last Spurs game, that played out such that it was Thomas Frank who knew more than what's his name, than Andrews in terms of how to go about winning that game because they didn't get a sniff. So I'm definitely worried going into tomorrow that they just don't get a sniff again and that he's got his number because Andrews has got to come up with something now to counter whatever happened last game. But yeah, Everton's a little bit worrying because that's 3 days later, and he hasn't, as has been pointed out many times, and Neil shared in his kind of comments, in his articles. I don't think he's played any midweeks yet this season. Him and Henderson in any competition. So you have to think that Sunday against Everton is a worry for minutes. But outside of that, I still think he's a fantastic pick. Like Brentford are just a big chance. They're still a big chance team, aren't they? I mean, it's a little bit annoying still, even with that Sharda. I mean, Sharda keeps being the one who's just slightly placed right in the middle of the 6-yard box, and Thiago's behind him, and he's the one not quite getting a touch to anything. But yeah, I like it with. It's just like Brentford have always been really for the last 3-4 years. Whether it was Tony, whether it was Bumo, whether it was Sharda in previously, they just get big chances, and he's the guy who's on penalties, and yeah, so.
Whilst we're at this juncture of talking about strikers, someone mentioned it earlier on, jokingly, FPL FOMO in the chat was saying I'm upgrading Katike to DCL this week. And I did want to talk about him briefly because he's someone that's not a million miles away from, I mean, I've completely missed the train on this one probably, but because obviously he's still reasonably cheap, you can quite easily change structure a little bit and take a Minteh down and a Gui up or something like that. But I just wondered what your thoughts are with him. I mean, whether he's someone that people can still go on. FPL Fermi, you are serious about DCL. No, it's perfectly fair enough. His points are incredible, aren't they, lately? And I suppose I've taken a little bit more of an interested watching brief on there. The fixtures are, I don't know, they're not terrible. People were initially put off by them in sort of more serious circles, but I think other than Newcastle away next week, and then there's Arsenal in about 5 or 6 weeks' time. Sorry, 5 or 6 games' time. They're not too bad. They've got Manchester United next week, I think, for example, at home. What are your thoughts there? I mean, because some people are frustrated. They might want to bring a striker down to Calvert-Lewin or move around formation a little bit because of the lack of midfielders. So, what are your thoughts? Have you been watching him carefully? I know, obviously, he's done the points, etc. So it's there's a danger that we'll be sounding like hindsight merchants here if we talk him up. But what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I haven't been watching him that closely outside of already knowing what. Sorry, I'm just getting a beer delivered.
Nice.
I haven't been watching him all that closely. Actually, I've not been able to watch as much football as I wanted, so sometimes miss out on leads. I mean, it's always a bit frustrating when you do miss the boat on Calvert-Lewin, because to me, it's no different in the sense that as good as he can be, he just always feels a bit fragile. He just feels a bit fragile physically, and he feels a bit fragile mentally, because he is both of those things. I think he is fragile physically, gets injured a lot, and he's fragile mentally. He's a confidence player. I mean, he's a hilarious bloke. He's fascinating, isn't he? I kind of love him because he's just like, he's a bit of an enigma. He's like a male model who just happens to know how to score goals in the Premier League. He's like a sort of football dilettante, isn't he? Oh yeah, all right, all right. What you want him to play up front for Leeds? What you want him to get you a few goals? Yeah, sure. And then when he's got that confidence to go with it, they just fly in. He just knows how to do it. It clicks in his brain where to be, which is why he's always got the big chances, always got the numbers. And so if he is confident, then yeah, I mean, the goals flow. I just can't believe those points. Looking at him, 7, 9, 6, 9, 13, 8 is absolutely remarkable. So yeah, I don't think anyone's missed the boat. I think you're there. If you go in there, you'd go in there structurally, aren't you? You go in there because you sort of, you're shifting your team around. But that still feels a bit scary to me, because if I'm shifting a team around, my whole team around structurally, and Calvert-Lewin facilitates that, it's like building a house on stilts, isn't it? You feel like it could go wrong at any time so easily, and it does feel a bit worrying. But if he had a really good run of fixtures, that would negate that a little bit, wouldn't it? Because you'd just be going for it as well. So yeah, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it, with him? I have watched him actually a bit more closely because, of course, inevitably he's going to get more attention. They do play to his strengths far more than Everton were at the end of his spell there. There's no doubt about that. I think you probably saw that ridiculous graphic. I know someone's mentioning it in the chat about how all of his goals have been scored in a straight line or something, like this sort of in the middle of the 6-yard box.
Yeah,
incredible. Actually, that was a match of the day, wasn't it? To be fair,
yeah, it was incredible. Yeah,
and he does look confident and happy, and the way he was talking in interviews, etc., he does seem like he's genuinely quite well settled, and he's appreciative that people are grateful of what he's doing and that sort of thing. So I definitely don't hate it. Personally, I would probably rather be in a position where he was, say, a second striker and there were loads of good midfield options, so I never had to rely on him that much. He was just someone that you could put in and out a little bit more. I think the problem I have with this pick is just simply, like you, is just relying on him is the bit that scares me, because the way that I would own him if I owned him in my structure is probably going to be one where I have a bum midfielder, or maybe even another bum spot, and therefore he kind of has to be in and around. And of course, if he is a problem, then the whole structure kind of falls apart pretty quickly. So that's my only issue with it. It's not particularly him as a player. He's doing well. And he's pulling penalties and all the rest of it. I know he's fairly well liked amongst analytics circles as well. So,
I mean,
you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you could guarantee me, I know this is just a ludicrous sort of hypothetical thing to say, but if you could guarantee me that he wasn't going to get injured for the next like 8 to 10 weeks, he's a fantastic pick, because he's always a fantastic pick, really, because he's always going to get the chances and the minutes and the penalties, basically. And yeah, I mean, that's all there is to it. He's generally a fantastic pick, even with bad fixtures, because he's so cheap and he's got all those boxes and stuff that you can build around. It's just that I don't know if it's just in my head, but it just feels frail, doesn't it? I just can't get anywhere near to be guaranteeing that he's going to be okay for all that time. But let's just quickly talk about Bowen, just quickly, because on the same topic, and you just mentioned him, but I do want to look back at that, because I know 2-3 weeks ago people were getting, it's still a wait and see, isn't it? Because I was using that as an example of like him versus Ekitike, for example, as a minutes thing. And obviously Ekitike's minutes do look a lot better now, and Ekitike is fantastic. But Bowen, I mean, how he didn't score against Fulham, I don't know. I'm not sure how that XG has been racked up, because that was so not last game, but the one before. I remember he had 2 brilliant chances. I don't know if one of them, I don't know how he like missed the ball or something, but he had 2 great chances for him. Couldn't believe he didn't score in that game. And he scores last night. Was it a penalty? I can't remember what happened now. I didn't see any of the West Ham game. Was it? How did he score last night?
Paquetá scored a penalty.
Scored a penalty. Yes, it wasn't even a penalty.
Bowen had a 1-on-1 basically, and Paquetá got his first assist in about 18 to 20 months. Something ridiculous.
So he's just Bowen is getting the chances still. I mean, he scored again, 0.7 XG, and it's Wolves away, Forest at home, Spurs away, Sunderland at home, Chelsea away, Burnley away. I mean, this is what we've been saying. Bowen is a fantastic pick. He's a fantastic pick. It's just, do you have that luxury? I think if I was like on a complete clean slate, and I could pick a striker, I probably would pick Bowen. I probably would pick him over Thiago and even Ekitike right now. I probably would, in terms of factoring in that price, like you say, in the structure and what it looks like. It's just so solid.
Yeah. Because what is it? It's probably 1.5 million ish saved, isn't it? Over Hugo, maybe not quite that, but I mean that makes the world of difference.
Yeah.
So it's quite good. Yeah. Final bit just here. We won't dwell on this because we've become a keepers pod, and it's always a bit dangerous. But just a sort of very short answer: best keeper from game week 21. I guess someone is looking for that. So FF Revo, and then Donny is asking whether Roofs is the guy. Roof's a good pick, no issue with that at all. I mean, obviously they're still lost some AFCON defenders, that sort of thing. So just, don't be surprised if, of course their underlying numbers aren't particularly good, are they? But so don't be surprised if it doesn't go well for the next couple of weeks, perhaps. But it's not a bad pick at all. From 21, I mean, I've bedded in with Sanchez because of the fixtures after that game week, really. So, I mean, that's all I'm going to say, even though it's maybe not the most salubrious or exciting name to mention here, but I think that's perfectly wise. Still a good million or so cheaper than Raya. Any quick thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, not massive thoughts, but I think I've looked at this a bit, quite a bit looking ahead in terms of reshaping my team, because obviously as a Raya owner, there's money there and it's a bit awkward and annoying, and you want Gabriel and you want, and there's a question in terms of, by the way, just on there, just really quickly, like, I don't know if we skipped over it. We won't go back to Gabriel, but should you go Gabriel and Timber? For me, the answer is yes. Yes, you should, pretty much. Like that's what I would like to aim for, because they're both just so good. So in line with that for me. I was kind of looking at Raya replacements. I couldn't really get past Sanchez, to be honest, as you say. But then Roofs, I think, is just a generally great keeper. If you're thinking as you should in terms of longer than 6 to 8 weeks and just for the season, because that's what you're doing with keepers. You just pick who the best for the season. It's going to be Roofs, Raya, Pickford, and Sanchez, and it's going to be those guys. Except a few of those are really quite expensive. So Sanchez is still 4.9, which helps a lot. And Pickford's 5.5 now. So But at the same time, I mean, Pickford. I don't even know. I didn't even want to look at what points he got again last night. But he made a shitloads of saves again. So this is, this guy hauls. They get a lot of cleans, and he hauls. I mean, he's probably, the way it's looking at the moment, probably going to finish the season as the highest scoring keeper. I mean,
again.
So
I think 9 or 10, by the way. I'm pretty sure again. So it's in that kind of trajectory again.
and then just really quickly on the keepers. That other than that, you've got to look really low because you might be really wanting to save money. So I do still like Kelleher because Brentford are they're good. They're going to get random cleans. You get saves, and then obviously I don't like Verbruggen and the Dubruggen.
Don't start me on this.
I know bloody the Dubruggen owners with 11 points followed by 11 points. I mean, that's you're laughing there for like 5-6 weeks worth of points. So, but he's like 4-5, isn't he? So, and they do rotate very well. And then obviously the last thing is John for Forest. So there is a point at 22, 24 where just the last thing on this, because it's a point about that, what I said about feeling on the edge and your team feeling on the edge and feeling frail, and I don't like it. And it's one of those things where as the weeks go by, because don't forget we've got wild cards again now, we've got chips again, and so you almost start to feel quite quickly like every week you're not putting out fires, but you're trying to get a really good team out for that week to get you into the next week, because each week buys you another week to maybe wild card, gets you another week of information, and each week that you can get to and have a really good team, it's kind of what it feels like at the moment. So anyway, what I'm saying with that is, even someone like John, if he nails down his team, I mean, I can't remember what was it now, just quickly check their fixtures, because this is where I was at in terms of had to look at all the options in terms of when you get to 22, 24. So 24 is pretty important because it's like Bruno's back, Palmer's there, the Chelsea fixtures are ridiculous, but he's got Palace at home, then Leeds, then Wolves at home. It's the sort of thing that's, if he's in the team, fine, because if it all goes wrong, we're at wildcard time now, is what I'm saying. So there's a few of these picks where it's very reasonable to wildcard at that time if they suddenly do lose their place or it's gone,
Cool. So. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, John, Victor John, famously the player that West Ham left at an airport and didn't buy him.
Really?
As it turns out, would have been an awful lot better a purchase than Mads Hermansen, who played about 3 or 4 games and each one more or less spooned it into his own net. But what can you do? But yeah, that's. I mean, he looks fine, doesn't he? He doesn't look like he's not a world beater or anything like that. But if he keeps that place, then that's an incredible piece of value. And you do feel less scared about going into weeks with him than you would to some. There are some weeks where you think if I play Dubravka, there's a chance that I might just get absolutely pounded here and he'll end up on a nothing. So, but yeah, if you do own Verbruggen and Dubravka, please kindly leave. Well done you. Let's move on. I'm not going to talk about the fixtures greatly because we really do have to move on to our teams. But some quite interesting things just to pick out before I do is that, Tottenham numbers looking a bit healthier than they have done for quite some time. So 1.6 projected for them and possible clean sheets. What else have we got? We got obviously captaincy we can talk about in a minute. At the moment, Man City is still the leading projected goal scorers, which is interesting, with 2.1. Arsenal might get a clean sheet at Bournemouth, but that's probably about as bad as their numbers have looked actually away from home for clean sheet for a while, because the Bournemouth are good, obviously. What else have we got? Brighton just about hitting 2. So there's a few things to pick out of interest there. Liverpool look like they were again projected to lose their clean sheet, which is frustrating if you're still hanging on to Verge. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything particularly you want to note here before we go on to teams. I'm quite happy to.
Yeah, we'll move on in a second. Just very quickly, it must be frustrating for Minteh owners like you if he's out looking at those numbers. I wasn't expecting to see it quite as high as 2. Just to note, I do think, like I mentioned before, I think the 2 with the biggest sort of difference in rest periods is the Everton at home to Brentford. Everton have 2 extra days rest on them So it's very difficult for anyone to go Sunday. Yeah, it's Sunday, isn't it? Very difficult for anyone to do that. So that does boost Everton for me a bit in terms of that fixture, and the same with Newcastle home to Palace. You would think, almost a week really for Newcastle to get through to rest.
Can I just have a quick moment to just say I'm sorry, because I watched, I can't remember what game it was. There was a La Croix fixture recently where Jesus Christ, you could have had a 20-pointer there. It was at one stage it was a clean sheet and a potential goal. I think he knocked back a potential assist. I mean, it could have been an absolute monster, and he ended up with nothing.
He's been so frustrating, and I didn't see his chance missed at the end, and I don't even want to see it, but I did. Yeah, he set up Minteh, and Minteh 50p head. Probably should have scored. He didn't get anywhere near, so he continues to punish me even though he's not in my team anymore. Incredibly frustrating. It's been so frustrating with La Croix and Palace in general. Such a streaky team, Palace. Once the sort of it all falls down, it feels like they can never keep a clean sheet. But I don't know. There's something not quite right at Palace at the moment. It doesn't look like quite enough effort really from the team as a whole, is what I'm seeing. But maybe they are tired. But yeah.
Yeah. Other than Devaney, they're an absolute waste of space at the moment.
I know Devaney.
Devaney, what a player.
Yeah. So that brings us to my team, which we'll just read out, which is Raya, O'Reilly, Timber, Hall, Van Dijk, Cunha, Gordon, Foden, Saka, Thiago, Haaland, La Croix, first bench at the moment, away to Newcastle. Devaney away to Newcastle. Devaney looks a little bit nicer on paper this week, potentially as a sub, just because Nketiah's now injured for 6 weeks, and I know that they are. So I mean that should pretty much nail him in the team. I know they're getting Brennan Johnson, or at least trying, and that'll probably happen. Be surprised if it happens in time for him to play this weekend though. So, and he was on penalties. He took the last penalty. So Devaney now, quite hilariously, is potentially nailed on penalties. But unfortunately, he's got Newcastle away, so he's not gonna get past second sub for me. So yeah, one free transfer. Really, really difficult decisions this week, and like moving forward, and again just getting through and surviving each week. Because obviously Van Dijk, for example, has Fulham away, and then the week after he's got Arsenal, which I don't really want to have to play him for. And I know so things are thin on the ground, and then you've got La Croix, who's got Newcastle. I don't want to play him this week, and I think he's got Villa at home. I don't want to play him there either, because they're just all over the shop at the moment. So I am leaning towards getting Tarkowski in. And then it could be for Van Dijk or La Croix, and obviously that can have various like repercussions, because obviously one is more expensive, so you get more money in the bank, and it's all about when and what. But it's likely at the moment to be for La Croix, because, like I say, Thiago is a bit precarious this week. So if I think he's not even going to start, I'm going to have to bench him. That's just something I'm going to have to look into in terms of team news and predictions and minutes and reading up and stuff. And if I do have to bench him, I don't want La Croix away at Newcastle. I'd rather have Van Dijk away at Fulham, even though I don't like either of them. And I don't have any faith in Van Dijk. But Liverpool are just that sort of random team that can randomly do it, randomly pull out a clean sheet. And Fulham are a bit blunt sometimes, but Fulham are in good form at the moment as well, so it makes it even worse. So, yeah, that's the potential at the moment. And that brings in Tarkowski for Brentford at home. And then, again, in terms of that point of, shoring things up with at least, you haven't got Gabriel, but have you got players with good fixtures? That's kind of what the Newcastle boys are for 4 weeks. Let's hope they stay fit. Hall is a worry though. He was definitely injured yesterday. He took painkillers apparently, and to stay on the pitch. So he's going to swell up, and hopefully it's not a sprain. Hopefully he's okay to play. But yeah, a bit like the Newcastle boys, where good fixtures for like 4 or 5 weeks. It's the same with Everton, and I just feel like it's helping me to just navigate a little bit and get through. Because it doesn't feel nice at the moment with Van Dijk and La Croix, and I had Senesi. So you had 3 players there who with sort of bad fixtures, and they're not playing very well. So yeah, I think that's all there is to say at the moment. And then there's obviously long term that leads to long term thinking of then trying to get 2 transfers for me to get into 22, because I want some options in 22. That's when Parma's fixtures start to get good. They've got Brentford at home then, and then they've got, I think, Palace or something, and then they've got the 4 incredible fixtures.
Yeah.
So I want ideally to have 2 transfers there to give me options, and there will be options, because that's also when Cunha has Man City, which isn't great. So there will be options there in terms of how do I get, for example, Parma. You've got Saka who can go to Parma. You've got potential cash cows in Raya and Van Dijk that can allow a bit more money to take Cunha up to Parma, something like that. But it would only be Cunha. Probably wouldn't be able to get there from Gordon. He might not even want to go there, but I think it's important to sort of have that option. So it's 2 transfers there. But in the meantime, more importantly for me, is how do I sort of patch things up and have a good team for this week and next week and the week after. So I think that's with Tarkowski at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I hate it, obviously. As a Keane owner, it's going to absolutely kill me. I really, really hope they both succeed for you from this week onwards.
By the way, how did Tarkowski not score yesterday? Did you see that chance?
Do you know what? No, I didn't watch that fixture yesterday. I watched the game before, but he has. I mean, they're both been in positions where they could mega haul. Admittedly, I think it's fair to say that Tarkowski chance sounded better than anything Keane has got lately as well. And to be fair, I know that people usually talk up his goal threat, and there's been a little less of that lately. But,
I mean, he does step up when Keane's not there as well. I mean, that's what it looks like. He has to. And what did he finish on? Like 19 DEFCON, didn't he?
Yeah.
Something absurd. But I don't get at the moment. I wish I knew more if there's any Everton fans in the chat, but it is difficult to understand at the moment how Everton are doing this. I mean, they weren't good against Burnley. They didn't deserve to clean, which was incredibly annoying. But they didn't look much troubled against Forest away. But with Garner, Irabunum, and McNeil, Rawle, Dibbling, Barry, I can't really explain it. But when a team just is getting the cleans, they've got good defenders and a good goalkeeper and a manager. So it's been horrible going into. I wanted an Everton defender weeks ago. It's been horrible every week going into those games, just knowing the inevitable cleans coming, and obviously now bring Tarkowski in and they'll all dry up. But there we are. So yeah. What about you?
Yeah. So it's you know how these things are. Everything quickly goes from everything's looking pretty rosy and having 4 transfers to suddenly thinking, shit, this team's going to be a bit crap for a few weeks at this rate. So I'll walk you through it. I have 3 transfers, so that is it can be fixed in theory. So the team at the moment is Bob Sanchez at City away. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. Virgil, Timber, O'Reilly, and Michael Keane, who has split the crowd between whether he's injured or ill. I don't know. It's another one of those horrible situations of will we know? Will we know before Saturday? I absolutely no idea. I mean, we'll come to that. So Minteh, obviously, he again very unlikely to make the Burnley fixture, which is a bit of a disaster because I was planning to roll this week for 4. Foden, Cunha, Saka, Ekitike, and Haaland, who is captaincy. We haven't talked about that actually, but and then on the bench, Dubravka, Double Anderson, and Gui. So 3 transfers and 0.8 in the bank. It's a bit of it's one of those things where you could be forgiven for thinking that this shouldn't give me as much of a headache as it does, but it does. So 2 cheap midfielders are a bit of a nightmare at the moment, with one injured and one not really doing anything other than DEFCON. There are players that I could pick that are sort of 0.8 cheaper that could do the same job as him at the moment. So that's a debate. And then the Michael Keane injury potentially as well that I don't know. I will know about, and also, like you say, the lack of faith in Virgil as well. So there's plenty of problems. How to solve it is more important. So I think at least one of these midfield spots I probably have to just bin it, I think, at the moment. It's not an ideal situation, but I'm probably going to be, whatever route I'm going to be taking, I'm probably going to be taking Minteh or Anderson, probably Minteh, obviously, right down. That seems to be the kind of easiest way to move things around. And it's whether I take more money out of one of the other more expensive players and retain a sort of standard structure of 4-4-2 or something like that, or just to accept that I'm going to be playing 5 at the back. Because like you, the easiest solutions to this team are just playing lots of defenders, because, like, for example, if I take Minteh out to a nobody, even if Keane's injured, okay, I could use the other 2 transfers to buy Gabriel and Tarkowski, and I can play that. Something like that, for example. Or I could raise the Gui spot up to a Calvert-Lewin, something like that. But I don't know. I don't like any of the solutions, really. Minteh is a bit of a pain in the arse this week. If he'd played, that would have really solved things. And I am very reliant on Keane coming back because I really don't want to sell him. But yeah, any thoughts? Because I could do with a helping hand this week, to be honest with you. And in fact, if the chat wants to jump in, you're more than welcome.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's really difficult.
3 frees and a 0.8.
3 frees and a 0.8. It's very difficult because, yeah, like you say, like everyone who's a problem isn't creating much cash for you when you get rid of them. So it feels really sticky and difficult. I suppose I'm just wondering if, Minteh. So if Minteh goes right down, what's that? Is that another million?
So he's 5.9.
It's 5.9. Oh, right, he's more than I thought. Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's back to the price that I bought him for. He actually went up to about 6.2 or 3 for a while, and then he failed in all the games that people needed him for. So he as you say, I can get up to a 6.7 with that spot alone. But of course, probably like lots of people,
So you were thinking about Gabriel. So I mean, are you? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just sort of I was in deep thought there, looking at your team just miles away. So, how are you? What's your Gabriel route then? If you go Gabriel,
there's two ways to get Gabriel. So one is if Keane's out, then I can go from Keane to Gabriel if I bring Minteh down. But obviously that means that I'm playing in a very risky structure of having probably something like a 5-3-2 for a while, or a occasional situation where Anderson has to play for a couple of weeks or something like that, which is not great. Or you go from Virgil, which is fine, but whether I need to do it this week is another debate. Obviously, we've had that discussion earlier today. It's not kind of essential. Can do. I'm sort of nonplussed about that. I'm more concerned about fixing this kind of Minteh Keane situation, I think. But I kind of feel, it's there's no lovely solutions here. It's the best bad solution, really.
Just trying to think what's long term. I mean, you could do something like Minteh right down, and could you even do like I suppose. Just thinking out loud, but something like Minteh to Reinders, no Riley to Gabriel.
Yeah, if Keane's fit, that's more than plausible.
It's even if he's not, it's not the end of the world, is it? If Anderson comes on, it's not the end of the world, is it? It's not too bad.
Yeah, it depends on the report, doesn't it? Because obviously, if Keane's out for medium term, then obviously he's a sell. But if it was one game, I suppose I could potentially just limp on. But that's the problem with transfers at this time of year, isn't it? Will we know?
Yeah, with three transfers, it's pretty good. You've got a lot of good things in place. It is pretty good again. You don't have that big cash cow in Raya. I think you've got the keeper right already, which helps a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just picking what's the long term move, and I'm just looking at like Anderson, Minteh, maybe O'Reilly, and yeah. I probably would look at a way to get Gabriel in, because then at least you know that you're picking someone long term.
Yeah.
But maybe we get news that Keane's out for longer. Maybe look at Tarkowski or something. I don't know.
Yeah, this is it. So, for example, it is possible, let's say, for the sake of argument, you could bring Minteh down to like a 4.3, and then even if Keane is injured, you could still bring in Gabriel and Tarkowski. But the problem there, like I say, is that you've got a very flimsy bench with Devaney and Gui and Joachim Anderson, and you've still got that nasty kind of Anderson midfield spot. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's I think I'm gonna need to absolutely nerf one of these midfielders in order to do anything. I think that's the only thing that's definite. The other thing, by the way, just very quickly before we move on, because I know that we're knocking on time, is like I say, this is why, in a way, Calvert-Lewin is quite an interesting thing, because you can easily dump one of those midfielders and play him instead. But again, it's another precarious situation, and is it better than one of those defenders? Well, still not sure about that. So that's another thing. Or even taking Hugo the Boss right down a bit as well to move things around. So there's still a lot going on in my head at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I just want to say really quickly before we go, because I will have to go in a sec, but someone in the chat said, what's the plan for getting Bruno back in? Which is an important question. I didn't mention that. I mean, just to answer it very quickly, I don't have a plan yet, but I'm obviously looking at it and seeing what it looks like when we get there. But for me, it's in my head, it's quite far away. There's other priorities that come first, like Palmer and Gabriel and all these sorts of moves. And I think it's like pretty much game week 24. And then that's when, United's fixtures turn for the better. They've got Fulham at home. However, I am happy to get there and not have him. Again, it's about who you do have. And it might be a bit of a struggle with, again, because I'm on the edge and transfers are on the edge. It's going to be potentially quite difficult for me to just get. I mean, I could. There are various ways it could work out. So I'll have. I'll guesswork. I'll have Palmer. I may have Saka or may not. I'm not sure. I'll have Gordon still, and Foden. So people I'm going to find it very difficult to let go of Foden. But Gordon is someone you could potentially let go of there. But actually, again, I'm okay if I don't have him back yet. So I'm not making like concrete plans. Because, for example, that week Gordon has Liverpool away. And I actually really like that fixture for Gordon, even though it sounds ridiculous. But for various reasons, that Liverpool are not very good. They can't defend. Gordon, that's what game when he will start for sure. He will be right up for it because he's a Liverpool fan and wants to play for them and is annoyed he didn't go there. And you can see him tearing up that whoever's right back. So again, I look at it and I'm like, well, actually, I'm absolutely fine with him not there. So, once we get to 24, 25, 26, we're also in wildcard territory, potentially. And one thing I won't bring up now, but I don't know which week we find out about the doubles and blanks, but that's going to be quite useful because it's only really then that it really opens up the serious discussion about when you can wildcard, but it'll be pretty soon. I'd imagine we'll know by then. I don't know. So, yeah, hopefully that kind of answers it in the sense that, I do want him back, but it's not that urgent. Just get the good players in before then.
Yeah, no, for sure. Actually, just one more quick question before we head off, because I starred it earlier on and forgotten about it. But those with Semenyo, because obviously there are still quite a few players with this issue. I mean, our good friend Lego Mane, actually, I'll just bring this up briefly, worth holding Semenyo 4 times City for a wee bit. Any thoughts there? Because I think you think he's going to play. Is that fair?
I think he's going to play this week. I think that would make a lot of sense. I mean, the manager's already said he's definitely going to play this week. And obviously that's a strange thing to say because he probably knows for sure that he's going. He said his goodbyes away from home. He's not said his goodbyes at home. It makes a lot of sense for Man City to want him to play against Arsenal, doesn't it? That would, in fact, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised at all if in the conversations they're saying, by the way, you win that game and you score, we'll throw in another 100 grand bonus for you. Because that's the sort of thing that would give them a significant chance of winning the league. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Little 100 grand backhander. So, but then I think the question is more like, is he a pick after that if he goes to City? And the short answer for me is no. I just can't see it with Pep. It's very rare someone integrates straight away and somebody plays straight away. And I don't know what Doku's fitness is though, but they've got Foden, Cherky, they've got a good team at the moment. Semenyo's good, but I don't know. It's one of those things where he could get into training with City, and Pep's like, whoa, like, this is all wrong. You know, you're a great player, but you need to change all this before you can. You know, you just don't know what he's going to think. So I think the minutes immediately become pretty terrible at City. So I wouldn't want him, which is obviously a big reason why I sold him.
Yeah, and actually, just on that, like, obviously, the impact he has in adding another City attacker to the midfielders list. That's another thing about, you know, knock-on effect to Cherky and all the rest of it. I think that's another little factor. Even Reinders, you know, perhaps to a lesser extent Foden, but we'll
I think it's definitely to a lesser extent Foden, which is why that point about Bruno and, you know, reluctant to sell Foden, because I think Foden is just absolutely nailed. No one can do what Foden does. I think he's absolutely nailed. So, and by the way, Foden, I don't know how he didn't score. Was it last game or the game before? He had the best chance. He had the best chance of the game, so he's still doing it. He just needs to play, Foden. So it's going to be very difficult. I need to get rid of Foden at any point.
Cool. Okay. Well, we should wrap it up there, I think, for everyone, so they can go away and get heinously trolleyed or whatever it is that they might do. Right. Well, we'll see you again. It's another tight set of turnarounds, so we'll figure out what our plan is. But it's Saturday morning, isn't it? This one, and then there's a Tuesday night again, and then there's a little bit of a gap for FA Cup fixtures and that sort of thing. So don't miss that. We'll try and figure out how we can be back for you for the next game week, perhaps if we can fit things in. But yeah, we'll let you know. But yeah, otherwise, thank you for joining us again on a weird sort of time slot, and have a very happy new year, and I hope you have bounteous FPL points to join you on your new year. So we'll see you again soon.
Happy New Year, mate, and everyone else. See you later.